There is an auto theft summit about to begin. I'm not sure if it started today or it's on starting tomorrow, but regardless,
Tomorrow.
there's been a lot made of it. You heard Pierre Poilievre probably. He was down at the Port of Montreal yesterday going on about how many cars are, of course, leaving the country and what we need to do.
Hmm.
But what we haven't really talked about or heard, or who we haven't really heard from is the Canadian Auto Dealers Association. So we wanted to cover that aspect of this because there are things they'd like to see as well. Hugh Williams is a spokesperson for the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association. He's on the line right now. Mr. Williams, thanks for being with us this afternoon. I said there are things you would like to see, so I say dealers would like to see addressed here as well. Can you tell us what it is that you would like to see addressed here in this summit?
Yeah, we've been sounding. Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me on. This is an important issue, not just for our dealers, but for the 20 million customers we serve. When a family, and I just heard from one this afternoon, loses their vehicle in a violent exchange, home invasion style, it's a scarring experience. Our dealers have fought long and hard to make sure that governments understand that auto theft is a serious problem in this country. We've always had an auto theft rate higher than the U.S., but what's happened since 2015 is there's just been a skyrocketing out of control level of organized crime, really capitalizing on some gaps in the Canadian system. And we've seen, for example, in the Greater Toronto region, a 300% increase. I mean, let that sink in. A 300% increase in stolen vehicles since 2015. So we've got to have action. We've been calling the parties to the table. We've seen some good action out of Ontario, but the federal government, it looks like they're finally moving ahead. And in fact, today you're referencing is the summit on already. On the eve of the summit, they announced an additional $28 million just this evening to give Canada Border Service agents more resources to search these containers before they leave the country.
Hugh, you mentioned that thieves are kind of taking advantage of gaps in the system. I wonder if you're referring to like that you don't get incarcerated for particularly long. It's fairly lenient. Is that one of those
Yeah, yeah,
gaps?
yeah. It's complicated. That is definitely one of the gaps that we need to make sure that offenders are kept behind bars. I've had lots of police chiefs tell me that they arrest somebody in the morning and they steal another car in the afternoon.
Right.
But I also want to make clear this is not kind of mom and pop small-time joyriders like we used to see, 20 years ago. This is international organized crime that's targeting Canada in a way they're not targeting the U.S. or other jurisdictions. And then they're taking advantage of local criminal rings to say, listen, the penalties are low, the enforcement is non-existent. Let's use this as the cash cow for guns, drugs, fentanyl, shipping the cars out of Canada, ending up in the Middle East, ending up in Africa, and then using that cash to funnel international organized crime. So what they're really taking advantage of is, desperate young criminals who they're using to steal these cars, and in some cases they're sending people over here on vacations and to spend their vacation stealing cars for organized crime. So this is why we need federal action and a coordinated approach, because one police agency can't stop this on their own.
So where is the shortcoming here as far as what the federal government can do? You mentioned the extra money being made. That announcement just earlier today. You heard Pierre Poilievre go on about what he'd like to see happen in the port, as well as, and I believe he said, if you steal a car the third time, you're going to jail for 2 or 3 years. Are you getting support from the federal government up until now in saying we're going to change those sort of sentencing guidelines to make this a serious crime? Are we heading in the right direction?
I think we're starting to head in the right direction, but honestly, for somebody who's been talking about this for 18 months to 2 years, it's confusing as to why it's taken so long to get to this point. I think I can personally name members of Parliament who have lost their cars to stolen vehicles. We had the Justice Minister. Let this sink in. The federal Justice Minister lost 2 cars to organized crime. The problem's been well known, and I just think that Canada Border Service Agency as an organization hasn't wanted to step up, and their political masters haven't forced them to. I think it's now clear the outcry in terms of the billion-dollar cost to the Canadian economy, the insurance cost that people are paying, the danger factor that I was talking about earlier. It's just hit a tipping point that MPs can no longer ignore it. And we're grateful for Pierre Poilievre to be out in Brampton, which is the epicenter of a lot of these theft, and of course the Port of Montreal, which is just the Wild West in terms of these vehicles leaving the country for raising that. And I think the federal minister, the new minister, Dominic LeBlanc, has stepped up and said, hey, we have have to do something about this. And so we're starting to see the funding, coordinated activity. It's just taken too long to get to this point.
You know, you spoke about the Wild West there, and I was thinking about how it seems like these crimes are becoming more and more brazen. Like just the other day here in Montreal, we had a car being stolen right from a dealership. Are they becoming emboldened, if you will, because it's just so easy to get away with it?
Well, I'll give you one example. I mean, our dealers are constant victims of this crime. Our dealers work with security consultants, put up physical barriers, make all kinds of security measures to reduce that. But obviously, organized crime it wants to take advantage of where the cars are at. But it's gotten so bad that the Ford Motor plant in Oakville, Ontario, the police reported that $650,000 worth of Ford vehicles were stolen from the assembly plant parking lot.
Oh my God!
So I mean, this is not just ones and twos coming off people's driveways anymore. This is a full-time production line that we've got to have a coordinated attack on.
But then it makes me think immediately, Hugh, should there not be some onus on those car makers to make those cars more secure and more difficult to steal?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and people are asking that. I think one of the things that I point to is that if you look at the U.S., they have a far lower rate of stolen vehicles than we have. For example, if you look at 2022, 2023. Our rate was 3 times what it was in the U.S. It's the one area that stands out in Canada. Our gun violence is lower, but our stolen vehicle rate.
So what do you attribute that?
Much higher.
So what do you attribute that to then? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Giant population, it should be much higher. Why is that happening? Do you think?
Well, proportion to population, to be clear. So accounting for the size of the population, on a percentage basis, their rate of stolen vehicles is much lower than ours. If you look at some of the U.S. states, they have very tough laws and incarcerations for stolen vehicles. We don't have that in Canada. That's certainly one aspect. And then I think if you look at the activity of Canada Border Service Agency compared to Homeland Security in the U.S., that certainly seems to be a factor, which is why we've got to get Canada Border Service Agency on board. We met with the Port of Montreal this past summer, and there was almost a kind of a yawning mentality from them. Hey, organized crime will move on eventually from this. That doesn't help the family that hasn't stolen from their driveway, who are carjacked. I know we're talking to Habs fans on this broadcast, but Mitch Marner, who plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is a not that well-known hockey club. He had his carjacked going to a movie. So, this is it's not, the odd story here and there. People know, everybody in their community who's lost a car in some very, very traumatizing ways.
It's crazy to even think that. We're going to run out of time. I did want to ask one thing. So with respect, you keep bringing up CBSA and the fact we need to see, more action. How much of this do you believe has to do with a lack of resources? Because $28 million, yes, it's a lot of money, but it doesn't seem like a lot of money to combat a problem like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's $1 billion problem in terms of the cost of this. So, but it's a good start. First of all, it's a good start that the federal government has brought people together to focus on this and to have an all-in approach. It's a good start that we had an emergency debate in the House of Commons that was put forward by Pierre Poilievre. This is the kind of attention that we need to it, because communities have been talking to their police agencies about it, but it's not one police agency that's going to solve it. It's all of them working together. And last March, there was an auto summit in Toronto, auto theft summit, and the police agencies came together. And there was $50 million from the Ford government to combat the problem in Ontario to create a auto theft task force, which was an excellent move. So if you compare nationally, 28 million announced today compared to 50 plus million from the Ontario government, obviously we need a bigger investment. But I don't want to be too negative.
Okay.
We're glad to see action being taken, attention being paid to it, because Canadians are feeling threatened, and the stats bear it out.
You mentioned 50 million from Ontario. We're looking at each other going, what about Quebec? I mean, have you approached the Quebec government? Are they willing to do? Are we doing anything about this here?
Yeah, I think the Quebec government recognizes that they've got to be part of the equation. We had police forces from Montreal who took place in the Auto Summit in Toronto last year. I think they're actively engaged, working with their counterparts. But one of the areas that's clear is the Port of Montreal, the rail system when these cars are being shipped on, are federal responsibility. And there was a case from Gatineau that's got a lot of attention here in Ottawa, where somebody can see that their car was stolen from
Right.
Gatineau, Quebec, and they can't get the car out
Yeah.
of the Port of Montreal because the police agencies won't talk to each other.
Don't have authority
Yeah,
here.
that's not the first time we've heard that.
Yeah, we've heard that a bunch.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Williams, want to thank you for your time. Let's see if we try to get some positive news coming out of this Auto Summit. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us on.
All right.
Cheers.
There you go, from the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association.
And that National Auto Theft Summit starts tomorrow in Ottawa.